There's no way to prepare for a moment that cleaves your life in two. I was folding laundry. Not exactly a cinematic moment. No dramatic thunderclap. No ominous music. Just me, sitting on the edge of the bed, matching socks and half listening to a podcast about gut health, of all things, when Dana came into the room and said, "I want to talk about opening our marriage." I actually thought she was joking at first. I looked up, one sock dangling from my fingers, waiting for the punchline. It never came. She stood there in her pale blue yoga pants, arms crossed, face unnervingly calm. Her tone wasn't accusatory or desperate. It was businesslike, detached. "I've been thinking about this for a while," she said, "and I think it's the next step for us. For growth. For honesty." Growth. Honesty. I was still trying to make sense of those words as if she'd spoken in another language. My heart thudded hard in my chest, dull and heavy. Growth. I repeated. She nodded like a therapist. "We've been stagnant for a while, Jack. You know that. This would be healthy. Liberating." "Healthy," I echoed, my voice hollow. "Liberating. Don't mock me," she snapped, her composure cracking just a little. I stared at her, taking her in like a stranger. The delicate line of her collarbone. The barest shimmer of sweat along her temple. She smelled like coconut body oil and fabric softener. Intimately familiar scents that suddenly felt foreign. I had known this woman for 17 years. Kissed her lips thousands of times. Memorized the birthmark beneath her rib, the way she moaned when I pressed my fingers behind her ear. And now she wanted sex with someone else. Not just sex. Permission. I didn't ask who it was. Not yet. But I wasn't stupid. You don't think about an open marriage out of nowhere. You don't bring it up while your husband is folding your underwear unless you've already crossed some kind of line. Emotional or physical. Probably both. I set the sock down on the bed and stood slowly, feeling years of history shifting like sand beneath my feet. "You're seeing someone," I said. Dana flinched. That tiny hesitation, the twitch at the corner of her mouth. It was all the confirmation I needed. She didn't deny it. Just pressed her lips together and looked away. "Jesus, Dana. It's not like that," she said quickly. "This isn't about someone else. It's about us. About needing more." More. I remember laughing, a dry and humorless sound. "So I'm not enough anymore." She stepped forward, voice low, gentle. "It's not about enough. I love you, Jack. I want to feel alive again. And I think you do too, if you're being honest." "If I'm being honest?" I looked at her, really looked. She was still beautiful, no doubt. But it wasn't her looks I was mourning. It was what we'd built. The house, the children, the late-night talks, the quiet moments of connection. The shared language that only long-term couples know. "I'm 43, Dana," I said. "Not dead. I still think about sex. I still want to feel wanted. But I didn't think I had to compete with strangers to be your husband." She touched my arm, but it felt like a stranger's hand. "That's just it, Jack. You shouldn't have to compete. If we open things up, there won't be secrets. No sneaking around. Just freedom." There was that word again. Freedom. Funny how people always invoke freedom when they're about to abandon something sacred. I pulled away from her touch, not angrily, just tired. "So what now? You date someone else while I tuck the kids into bed and pretend this is all enlightened? That's not fair." "No. What's not fair is asking me to watch our marriage bleed out in the name of your personal evolution." She didn't respond. Just stood there in the doorway, looking both ashamed and stubborn. And then she left. Just like that. She didn't slam the door or cry or plead. She went downstairs, got in her car, and drove off to clear her head, which I could only assume was code for fucking him, or at least planning to. I sat there in our bedroom for what felt like hours, surrounded by half-folded clothes and the ghost of the life we once had. Then I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the man staring back. My hair was thinning at the temples. My jawline, once sharp, was softening. There were lines around my eyes, laugh lines, sure, but also worry lines. Fatigue lines. I had spent years being a provider, a partner, a father, and now all I could see was someone whose best years might already be behind him. Was I still desirable? Still a man someone would want to touch, to seduce, to undress? I thought of Dana's words, feel alive again. I hadn't realized how much I'd been clinging to the illusion that we were still in love, that we were still us. But she'd shattered that tonight with 5 simple words. "I want an open marriage." I sat down on the edge of the bathtub, my hands shaking. I thought of the years I'd given her, my loyalty, my body, my heart. And I wondered, for the first time in a long time, who I was without her. And worse, who I'd let myself become. Because maybe, just maybe, Dana was right. Not about the open marriage. Fuck that. But about something deeper, something I'd been avoiding. Maybe I had been fading all along. And maybe it was time to do something about it. It was after midnight when I found myself alone in the living room. Lights off, a half-drained glass of whiskey sweating on the coffee table. The kids were asleep upstairs. Dana still hadn't come home. Her absence didn't sting as much as the silence did. The kind that wraps itself around your chest like a wet sheet and settles into your bones. I wasn't angry anymore. That would come later, in waves. No, this was something else, something hollow. Emptiness. I leaned back on the couch and picked up my phone, staring at the black screen. It was too late to call anyone. Not that I had anyone to call. I had spent years pruning friendships for the sake of marriage, fatherhood, responsibility. Somewhere along the line, I'd convinced myself that being a husband and dad meant burying the man I used to be. But now, I didn't even know who that man was anymore. Out of boredom or desperation, I opened my photo gallery. Most of it was kid stuff. Max's soccer games. Ellie in her Halloween witch costume. Vacations, Christmas mornings, school plays. Sprinkled in were pictures of Dana, most of them older. In the newer ones, she was always a few feet away, her smile more polite than passionate. But what caught me off guard wasn't any of those. It was the archive folder, old uploads from my first phone. College years. High school. Nights out. Parties I barely remembered. Faces I hadn't seen in over a decade. There was one in particular that stopped me cold. Kara. She was leaning against a red pickup truck, her hair wild from the wind, a Dr. Pepper can in one hand, and my hoodie tied around her waist. God, she hadn't changed a bit in my memory. Those intense brown eyes, the way she always tilted her head when she laughed, like the joke was somehow too big to handle upright. We dated junior and senior year of high school. She was my first serious girlfriend, the first girl I'd ever really loved. We broke up because she moved to Arizona for college and I stayed in Colorado for trade school. It wasn't messy. It was just life. But she made me feel alive. Unlike Dana, Kara never asked for me to tone it down. She liked it when I was spontaneous, bold, reckless even. We used to sneak into the community pool after dark and have sex on the diving board like it was our secret temple. I hadn't thought of her in years, not really. But here she was, a ghost in my palm. I clicked open Facebook. My fingers hovered over the search bar. This was stupid, childish, reckless. I typed her name anyway. Kara Mitchell. There were a dozen results, but the third one matched. The same face, older now, her smile lined but still radiant. She looked great, maybe even better. She had that grown woman beauty, the kind that comes from living hard and laughing louder. Her profile picture was her and a big golden retriever. No husband in sight. Without thinking, I tapped message. My thumb hovered over the blank field, heartbeat kicking up. What the hell was I doing? Still, I typed. Hey Kara, it's Jack Whitaker. I know it's been years, but I came across an old photo of us and just wanted to say hi. Hope you're doing well. Simple, polite, harmless. I hovered over send for a full minute. Then I hit it. The moment it was gone, regret flooded me. What was I expecting? That she'd respond with warmth? That she even remembered me at all? Maybe she was married. Maybe she'd think I was pathetic, reaching out after God knows how long. I set the phone down, convinced I wouldn't hear back. But 10 minutes later, it buzzed. Jack Whitaker. Wow. Of all the blasts from the past, this one made me smile. How the hell are you? I stared at the screen in stunned silence. A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. A genuine one. Probably the first all week. Not great, if I'm being honest, I typed. But it's good to hear from you. You still in Arizona? The reply came quick. Actually moved back to Colorado a few years ago. Older now. What's going on with you? You still building things? We chatted for over an hour. Her warmth was unchanged, easy, unfiltered, nostalgic. She asked about my kids, my work, even my favorite whiskey. She told me she worked for an arts nonprofit now and just finished redoing her patio herself. Still wild. Still uncontainable. Then she said something that stopped me cold. I always wondered what might have happened if I'd stayed. The words lit something dormant in me, like a forgotten match struck in a dark room. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but something closer to ache. Longing. Yeah, I wrote. Me too. There was a pause. Then another message. Want to grab coffee sometime? Or is that not allowed? I hesitated. I should have said no. I should have reminded her, and myself, that I was still married, even if Dana had already emotionally checked out. But instead, I typed. I'd like that. After we said goodnight, I sat there in the dark, staring at my phone. I knew I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't take back, but it didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like remembrance of who I'd been, of who I might still be. The ghost of my past had come knocking, and for the first time in a long time, I wanted to open the door. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I don't know why. Maybe nerves, maybe habit, but there I was, seated near the window, hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee I hadn't touched. The cafe was small, cozy, humming with the quiet chaos of espresso machines and casual conversation. I kept glancing at the door, scanning each new face, wondering if she'd actually come. Then the door opened, and time stopped. Kara stepped in wearing jeans, boots, and a dark green sweater that made her eyes look even richer than I remembered. Her hair was shorter than it had been in high school, layered now, curling slightly at her shoulders. But that smile, that same damn crooked smile, was still hers. She spotted me immediately. My breath caught. She crossed the cafe with an ease that made me ache. Like nothing had changed. Like she had always been walking toward me. Jack Whitaker, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Kara Mitchell, I replied, and for a second, we just stared at each other. Up close, I could see the small changes, laugh lines, a faint scar at her jaw, the quiet maturity in her eyes, but none of it dulled the heat that sparked between us. If anything, it intensified it. She was no longer the girl I'd kissed under the bleachers. She was a woman now, and God, she wore it well. You look good, she said, biting her bottom lip like she was still trying to decide if she should say it. So do you, I answered. And I meant it. So much better than I remembered. We ordered new drinks and slipped into conversation like we hadn't lost years in between. Talked about work, the ridiculous things people posted online, the weirdness of getting older. She teased me for still liking my coffee like engine oil. I laughed at how she still poured too much cream and made that little swirl with her spoon like it was sacred. There was electricity in the air, not overpowering, but steady, buzzing beneath every smile, every glance that lingered too long. Then came the silence. Not awkward, not forced, just heavy, full. So, she said slowly, setting her cup down. Tell me what really brought this on. I leaned back in my chair, hesitating. The ceiling fan above us made a soft, rhythmic creak that almost matched the beat of my pulse. I guess I was feeling like I didn't exist anymore, I said finally. Like I was invisible in my own house. Then I saw your picture, and it reminded me there was a time when I didn't feel that way. She didn't speak right away, just looked at me with those eyes, soft, but sharp, unapologetic. I know what that's like, she said. I was in a relationship a couple years ago that made me feel like wallpaper. Pretty, but ignored. You give, and one day, you realize you're not even a person to them anymore. Just background noise. I nodded. That hit too close to home. Then she smiled gently and added, but you were never background to me. I looked up. What? She shrugged. Back in high school, I thought you were it. The one. I never told you that, but I always wondered what if. I always missed that version of me, the one I was with you. There was a beat of silence. Then I said the first thing that came to mind. I still remember our first kiss. Kara chuckled, shaking her head. Under the bleachers after practice. You smelled like grass and cheap cologne. You tasted like cherry chapstick. You had no idea what you were doing. Neither did you. Still better than my next boyfriend. We both laughed, and then the air shifted. I don't know how else to describe it. Something invisible curled around us and pulled us closer. Her gaze softened. Mine lingered. Do you ever think about that? I asked. About us. I nodded. Her voice dropped. More than I should. My heart pounded like I was 17 again. I hadn't felt this alive in years. Not with Dana, not with anyone. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about sex. It was about feeling seen, desired, important. And then, without warning, she reached across the table and took my hand. Come on, she said, standing. I followed her without thinking. She led me through the back door of the cafe, past the alley, around to the small park just across the street. The trees were shedding early leaves, scattering gold on the pavement. The sky was gray but open, wide. Kara stopped beneath one of the trees, turning to face me. "I don't want to overthink this," she said. Neither did I. I stepped closer. Our eyes locked, and then we kissed. It wasn't like the first time, messy and rushed. This was deeper, slower, like we both knew exactly how to move, how to touch. Her lips were soft but certain, tasting faintly of caramel and cinnamon. My hands found her waist. Hers curled into my jacket, tugging me just a little closer. The years between us melted. We didn't speak after that. Didn't need to. We just stood there, forehead to forehead, the world holding its breath around us. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I wasn't broken. I was just a man, kissing a woman who remembered who he used to be. It's funny how memory works. The way it sneaks up on you when you least expect it. How a familiar laugh, a whiff of perfume, or even the sight of a campus bookstore can light up something dormant inside you. That's exactly what happened the moment I pulled into the parking lot of my old university. 20 years had passed since I last walked these paths, but it felt like yesterday. The student center still smelled vaguely of burnt coffee and microwave burritos. The quad was just as I remembered it, green, wide open, scattered with clusters of students pretending to study while subtly eyeing each other. It all felt like stepping back into a life that hadn't realized I left. And waiting for me near the library steps, like some memory conjured into flesh, was her. Harper. We'd met freshman year. She was bold, loud, hilarious, utterly impossible to ignore. Harper had been my chaos in a world of schedules and clean lines. We were never a couple, not officially. We just collided. Frequently. Passionately. She pulled the recklessness out of me, and I worshipped the way she lived like rules were just suggestions. And here she was now, sitting on a bench with a latte in hand. That same impish grin stretched across her lips. "Jack fucking Whitaker," she said, rising to her feet and opening her arms like she was about to body slam me. I laughed, bracing for the impact. She hugged me hard, smelled like sandalwood and citrus, and wore a leather jacket over a dress that was probably too short for the campus, but perfect for her. The same unruly hair, though now with streaks of sun-bleached gold. She looked incredible. "You haven't changed a bit," she said, pulling back to look at me. "I've got less hair and more regrets," I said with a grin. "Still hot, though," she added, not even bothering to hide the way her eyes scanned me. We walked through campus, retracing old steps, past the dorms we used to sneak into, the lecture halls we slept through, the park where she once dared me to skinny dip at 2 a.m. Our banter was effortless, snappy, teasing, sometimes too honest. "Still married?" she asked eventually, kicking at a pile of leaves. "Technically," I replied. "But complicated." She raised an eyebrow. "Open marriage complicated or sleeping on the couch complicated?" I sighed. "Open marriage complicated." Harper whistled low. "Damn." She asked for it. Dropped the bomb out of nowhere. Said she needed to feel alive. "That's rich," Harper said, tossing her coffee cup into a trash bin. As if screwing someone else is the only way to feel alive. Maybe she should have asked you how to make her feel that way. I stopped walking. That line landed harder than she knew. Because that's what it all came down to, wasn't it? I had spent years putting others first, working late, fixing broken things around the house, saying no to temptation. And in the end, none of it mattered. She wanted new. Excitement. Something I wasn't anymore. Harper turned to face me, tilting her head. "Want to feel alive again, Jack?" My breath caught. "You offering?" Her smile turned dangerous. "You remember the English building?" I blinked. "The one with the crooked stairwell?" She purred, looping her arm through mine. "Still just as hidden. Want a nostalgia tour?" We made our way inside, laughing like teenagers trying to keep a secret. The hallways smelled of dust and old paperbacks. No cameras. No classes this late in the afternoon. Just flickering fluorescent lights and peeling bulletin boards. Harper pushed open the stairwell door and led me up 2 flights. At the top, we emerged into a narrow landing with a dusty couch tucked under a skylight. "I can't believe this is still here," I said. "Believe it," she replied, stepping closer, her voice dropping. "I've got some unfinished business with you." Before I could answer, Her fingers curled around the collar of my shirt and pulled me into a kiss that set every nerve in my body on fire. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was heat. Raw, nostalgic, furious heat. I pressed her against the wall, hands gripping her hips, the leather of her jacket squeaking under my fingers. She moaned into my mouth, tugging me closer, biting my lower lip just hard enough to make me groan. I felt her fingers slip under my shirt, nails dragging across my stomach. It had been so long since someone touched me like they wanted me. And God, I wanted her too. Her leg wrapped around mine, grinding against me with a hunger that made my head spin. I didn't care where we were. Didn't care who might walk in. This wasn't just sex. It was reclamation. She pulled back, breathless, lips swollen. Still got fire, Whitaker. You lit it, I growled. She grinned, biting her lip, then leaned in again, this time slower. Her tongue traced the edge of my jaw, her breath warm against my skin. I was hard against her thigh, and she clearly noticed. I used to dream about this, she whispered. What you'd be like now? Older, rougher, all that restraint ready to snap. I'm not here to be gentle, I said. Good. We didn't go all the way, not there, not yet. But everything short of it. Yeah, hands, mouths, friction. My fingers were tangled in her hair as she rode my thigh through her dress, whispering my name between moans. I felt her come undone, trembling against me, holding nothing back. And I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. When we finally collapsed onto the couch, her head on my shoulder, our breathing heavy and uneven, she whispered, "You needed that." I did, I replied, running my hand down her back. Don't let her make you feel small, Jack. You were always so much more than that. I looked down at her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't pain or confusion. I felt powerful again. The first message came out of nowhere. Subject, old times and older spreadsheets. From Natalie Pierce. I hadn't heard that name in nearly 10 years, but the second I saw it pop into my inbox, a slow warmth spread through me. Natalie. God, that name used to do things to me. She had been the bright spot in those long office nights, the late 20s grind when I was still clawing my way up the corporate ladder. She was sharp, witty, and dangerously attractive in a quiet, understated way. Her eyes always seemed to be laughing at some joke only she knew, and her pencil skirts and silk blouses had once made coffee breaks feel like stripteases in slow motion. We were never lovers. Not then. Just temptation. Constant, palpable, maddening temptation. The kind that lived in every glance, every brush of fingers over shared files, every accidental meeting by the copier at 10 p.m. Jack, the email began. I came across an old folder today and found your infamous client rage spreadsheet, the one with the color-coded swearing levels. Still the funniest thing I ever saw in that cubicle farm. I hear you're still in Denver. I am too. Drinks? For nostalgia's sake? She signed it the same way she used to sign sticky notes. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Harper's kiss was still on my lips. Kara's laughter still echoed in my mind. And Dana's voice still haunted me at night, cold and clipped, filled with polite detachment as she spun her open marriage narrative like a TED Talk. But this, Natalie, this was a ghost I'd never really let go of. I typed out a simple reply. Drinks sound good. Thursday? She responded in under 5 minutes. We met at a rooftop bar downtown. I spotted her instantly, seated near the glass railing, wine glass in hand, legs crossed in a way that told me she knew exactly how much power she had and exactly how to wield it. Natalie, I said, approaching. She stood, smiled, and hugged me like no time had passed. Her perfume hit first, vanilla and something faintly citrus. Then the way her hips pressed against mine, just briefly, just enough. Jack Whitaker, she said as she pulled back. Still wearing button-ups like you hate attention. I glanced at my shirt. Some things never change. Oh, I don't know, she said, eyes flicking over me. You've filled out in a good way. Older looks good on you. You look incredible, I said truthfully. And she did. Sleek black dress. Heels. Her hair a little shorter, curled. Her lips painted a red that should have been illegal in most settings. We ordered drinks and caught up, talked about people we used to work with, the hellish projects, the ridiculous office gossip. It felt like slipping into a warm bath. Familiar, effortless, and underneath it all, that same tension from years ago. Except now, there was nothing in the way. No ethics committee. No HR codes. No spouses in shared Slack channels. You know, she said, swirling her wine. I used to fantasize about you in that corner cubicle. Wondered what it'd be like to climb into your lap while you were on a call. I nearly choked on my bourbon. You're joking. Oh, I'm not, she purred. There were nights I stayed late just to watch you. You had this focus when you worked, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed. It was distracting. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My mind was spinning. And that night, she added, when we both stayed late during the merger, remember that? I nodded slowly. You touched my back when you reached for the printer. Just your palm, right at the curve of my spine. I nearly lost it. I remember, I murmured. I thought I imagined your reaction. Oh no, she whispered, leaning closer. You weren't imagining anything. Silence fell between us, heavy and thick with want. Do you want to get out of here? She asked. I didn't hesitate. Her apartment was minimalist and clean, but it felt lived in. Books on the coffee table, shoes by the door, a half-full bottle of wine waiting in the kitchen. The moment the door clicked shut, her hands were on me. Urgent, sure, hungry. I kissed her hard, one hand buried in her hair, the other slipping around her waist to pull her against me. Clothes came off in staggered pieces, like a puzzle we were desperate to solve. Her lips found my neck, her teeth grazing the skin there. I groaned. Her hands unbuttoned my shirt with slow precision, and she trailed her fingers over my chest like she was mapping forgotten territory. Still tense in all the right places, she whispered. I slid her dress off, let it fall around her ankles. No bra, just curves and heat and eyes that told me she wasn't here to take things slow. We moved to the couch. Her legs straddled me, bare skin against mine. She rocked her hips slowly, deliberately, grinding against me until I had to grip her waist to keep from losing it too fast. She smiled at that, wicked, knowing. Natalie, I breathed. God, I waited years for this, she moaned, grinding harder, kissing me like she wanted to consume me. When we finally came, it was like breaking a dam. Bodies clenched, breaths caught, muscles trembling. She collapsed against me, skin slick with sweat, lips still parted. We stayed like that, wrapped in each other, our pulses slowing. Eventually, she said, "You're not broken, Jack." I didn't reply. You just forgot who you were. I ran my fingers along her spine, slowly, thinking of all the versions of myself I'd buried over the years, beneath paychecks, carpools, birthday parties, and Dana's slowly vanishing affection. Maybe I needed to be reminded, I said softly. Natalie leaned up, kissed me gently this time. Well, she whispered, you can consider yourself reminded. The moving van had pulled away just a few hours before when I saw her again. Julie. She lived next door to us for years, single mom, quiet but strong. Her house was always just a little too clean, like someone trying to stay ahead of chaos. I remember watching her out front sometimes, washing her car in a tank top and jean shorts, always polite when we waved. Back then, I noticed her in a vague, respectful way, admired her even, but I was married and devoted, whatever that meant anymore. Now, standing in the backyard, beer in hand, I caught a glimpse of her over the fence, bare shoulders, her sundress slipping down just enough to tease the curve of her back. She was fiddling with a folding chair, trying to set it up near her small fire pit. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, strands falling loose in a way that made her look effortlessly sexy. She looked up, surprised. Jack. I smiled. Hey, Jules. You having a fire or sacrificing something? She laughed, a real full laugh. Just trying to salvage what's left of summer. I leaned on the fence. You moved back. Yeah, temporarily, maybe. My mom's sick, and this place needed love. Figured I'd kill two birds. Her voice carried the same softness I remembered. Something maternal. Familiar. Safe. But the way her eyes lingered on me, longer than they used to, that was new. You look different, she said after a moment. Divorce diet, I replied with a half smile. You know, emotional instability, low self-worth, existential dread. Real slimming. Her grin widened. Well, it suits you. I didn't answer. We stood there for a few beats in comfortable silence. Then she said, You want to come over? I've got beer. And marshmallows. For tradition's sake. I hesitated for less than a second. Sure. Let me grab a jacket. We sat close to the fire, two lawn chairs pulled up around the crackling pit, flames casting shadows across her porch. I don't know how long we talked. Hours maybe. About our kids. Her daughter had moved to Oregon for grad school. About life. About everything and nothing. She looked up at one point, firelight flickering in her eyes, and said, "You were a good husband." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't know what kind of husband I was." "Oh, I do," she said softly. "I watched you. You didn't see it, but I saw you carry groceries in when your wife didn't help. I saw you fix her car in the cold. You always showed up." That hit harder than I expected. She wasn't flattering me. She wasn't building to anything. She just saw me. And God, that felt like oxygen. I don't think she wanted to be seen anymore, I admitted. She wanted to feel young. Free. As if I'd somehow become the cage. Julie looked at me for a long time. Then, gently, "You were never the cage, Jack. You were the roof. The foundation." Silence fell again. This time, heavier. Charged. She stood slowly, brushing her hands on her thighs. "Come inside. I've got something better than marshmallows." Her kitchen was small but warm. Pale wood cabinets, little plants along the windowsill. She handed me a glass of scotch. The good kind. I took a sip, letting the burn settle into me. "I missed this," she said, leaning on the counter. "This. Conversation. Ease. Company that isn't performative." I nodded. It's been a long time since someone talked to me like I mattered. Julie stepped closer. Slowly. Deliberately. "You've always mattered," she said, her fingers brushing mine. "Just not to the right person." And just like that, something shifted. I set the glass down, and she reached for me. The kiss started tentative. Years of built-up caution in that first touch. But then it deepened. Her hand slid around my neck, mine to her waist, her body soft and firm all at once. There was no rush, no desperation, just a slow unraveling. Of both of us. We moved to the living room. The lights dimmed. Her skin glowed in the firelight seeping through the window. She sat on the couch, pulling me down with her, her legs curling under mine. The rhythm of our breathing slowed. Her hands traced the lines of my shoulders, my chest. Not exploring, they knew where they were going. "Jack," she whispered, brushing her lips down my jaw. "Do you know how long I've wanted to do this?" I looked at her. "You did." She nodded. "I used to lie awake in that room over there." She motioned to the guest bedroom near the kitchen. "Listening. Hoping you'd walk over. Just once." I was stunned. "Why didn't you ever?" "Because you were loyal," she said. "Too loyal. And I respected that. But now," her hand slid under my shirt, fingertips pressing to my skin. "Now you're free. And I'm not waiting anymore." Clothes came off slowly, piece by piece. Every movement was deliberate. Her skin was soft, warm, real. I kissed the hollow of her throat, the swell of her breast. Her breath hitched as my tongue traced down her stomach. I had forgotten what it felt like to worship someone, to be wanted this way. She pulled me on top of her, eyes locked on mine, whispering, "Make me remember what love feels like." And I did, over and over. Afterward, we lay tangled in the blankets on her couch, her head on my chest, her hand resting over my heart. The fire had died down to embers. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. I turned to her. "Neither am I." She smiled, almost sadly. "But maybe we both found something we didn't know we needed." I nodded. Because in her touch, her words, her presence, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Home. I hadn't thought about Eric in years. We'd been best friends growing up, inseparable until life pulled us in different directions. He moved out of state, got married, started a business. I stayed local, built my own life. We drifted like people do. Still, when I saw his name pop up on my phone, text message, no punctuation, I smiled. "Back in town for a bit. Drinks?" I replied, "Only if you're buying." We met at a local bar, nothing fancy, dim lighting, cracked leather booths, country music low in the background. When I stepped inside, I saw him immediately. Same crooked smile, same too loud laugh. Time had thickened us both, but the friendship came back like it had never left. After a couple of beers and half a plate of nachos, he leaned back and said, "You know who's here too, right?" I shook my head. "Kayla," he said. "My sister. She moved back after her divorce." The name hit me like a jolt. Kayla. The girl who used to follow us around when we were kids, tagging along on bikes, sneaking into the basement while we played video games. Back then, she was annoying. But sometime around her junior year of high school, she turned into something else entirely. I remember her brushing past me in cut-off shorts and a tank top, looking over her shoulder with this smirk like she knew I was watching. And I was. Always. She was 4 years younger. Untouchable. Forbidden. But she used to look at me like she wanted to be touched. I saw her at the gym a few days ago, Eric continued. She asked about you. I told her you were probably still mowing the lawn shirtless like a middle-aged Calvin Klein model. I laughed. You're an asshole. Still got it, though, he said, clinking his glass against mine. Anyway, she said she might stop by tonight. Just FYI. I didn't think much of it, until I turned around and there she was. Kayla, all grown up. Black jeans, heels, a dark red blouse that clung to her curves in a way that made it impossible to look anywhere else. Her hair was darker now, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She walked straight to our booth, confidence radiating from every step. Hey, boys, she said, sliding in next to me, not her brother. Eric rolled his eyes. Here we go. I smiled. Hey, Kayla. Her eyes met mine, lingered there just a little too long. Jack, you look good. You too, I said, my voice lower than I intended. Eric didn't stay long. Said he had to meet his wife. When he stood, he pointed between us and joked. Try not to corrupt each other. Kayla smirked. Too late. When he left, the air shifted. The music got quieter. The bar lights dimmed just a little more. So, she said, taking a sip of her drink. You're single now? Something like that. I replied. I'm sorry, she said, but her eyes didn't match the sentiment. They were playful. Curious. Actually, I'm not. I always thought Dana looked too polished. Like she belonged in a catalog. She did like everything curated, I said, including her freedom. Kayla tilted her head. You didn't deserve that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick, charged. She ran her finger around the rim of her glass, then looked up. Can I tell you something I probably shouldn't? I leaned in. Always. I used to sneak into the garage when you were working on your car, she said. Pretend I needed help with my bike or something. Just to watch you. My breath caught. I had no idea. She smiled. Oh, you had some idea. The way you looked at me when you thought no one was watching. I didn't respond. Couldn't. I'm not 16 anymore, she said softly. And you're not off limits. She set her glass down. Come home with me. Her apartment was neat, modern, scented faintly of vanilla and something floral. She dropped her keys in a bowl by the door and kicked off her heels with a soft sigh. Then she turned and looked at me like she was trying to decide how fast to go. I crossed the room and kissed her before she could speak again. It was electric. Her mouth opened beneath mine, and her hand slid under my shirt immediately, nails grazing my skin. She pulled it over my head and tossed it to the floor, then kissed down my chest like she'd been imagining this for years. Her body felt incredible under my hands, soft in all the right places, tense where she needed to be. She tugged at my belt with a little growl and whispered, I used to think about this every time I saw you mowing your lawn. I grinned. You should have said something. I wanted to, she said, pulling me toward her bedroom. But you were a good man back then. Too good. And now, her lips grazed my neck. Now I'm hoping you're a little bad. She wasn't shy. She climbed onto the bed, laying back with her blouse undone, revealing lacy black lingerie that looked almost too perfect to be a coincidence. I took my time with her. Let my hands roam every inch. Let my mouth trace all the places I used to fantasize about touching. She moaned my name when I found the spot just below her hip, wrapped her legs around me, and whispered, I want you to remember this. And I did. Every movement, every gasp, every scratch of her nails across my back. She arched into me, whispered filthy things between desperate kisses, and when we finally came, her voice cracked on my name like it was something sacred. Afterward, we lay in silence, her head on my chest, her fingers tracing slow circles over my stomach. I waited a long time for that, she said. I had no idea. You were always too noble. It was kind of hot, honestly. I smiled. You're dangerous. She laughed. And you're finally free enough to enjoy it. I thought of Dana, wherever she was. Probably wrapped around some younger man, still pretending this was all about growth. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel like I was betraying anything. I felt wanted. I felt alive. And as Kayla pulled the sheets over us, curling into me like I belonged there, I realized something else. I wasn't chasing my past anymore. I was reclaiming my present. When Dana first mentioned our 10-year neighborhood reunion, I almost laughed in her face. The idea of playing social theater with people who still thought we were a power couple was nauseating. But she insisted, said it would be good for optics. She even used that word, optics, like our marriage was a brand we still had to manage. Truthfully, I think she just wanted an audience, a place to flaunt her newfound freedom, and, more importantly, to watch me squirm. She thought I'd show up broken, bitter, playing the role of the dumped husband while she floated around in some sleek dress with that fake, enlightened smile she'd been perfecting for months. But the thing is, this wasn't 6 months ago. I wasn't the same man who sat in that kitchen the night she said she wanted an open marriage. I wasn't the hollowed-out version of myself who stared into mirrors wondering if he was still desirable. I had changed. I had evolved. And I had the proof written in lipstick on my skin, in scratch marks down my back, in the way 7 different women, each from a different part of my life, had reminded me who the hell I used to be. So I went. But not for her. The reunion was held at a rented event space downtown. Stylish, but not stuffy. Candles and glass cylinders on the tables. Soft music. Familiar faces aged by life, parenting, time. I wore a dark button-down, sleeves rolled to the forearms, clean shave, faint cologne. Nothing too flashy. But I felt confident. Grounded. I walked in alone. Dana was already there. She wore a blood-red dress, tight, deliberate, calculated. Her hair done in soft curls, makeup sharp enough to wound. And on her arm was a man who looked like he barely cleared 30. Fit, smug, and visibly uncomfortable in a room full of people who remembered her with me. Our eyes locked across the room. I gave her a nod. She smiled, a tight, condescending curl of the lips. Then the whispers started. Jack? Jack Whitaker? Damn, man, what happened to you? Looking good, brother. Didn't recognize you without the cargo shorts. I laughed, let the greetings roll in. And then, as if the universe decided to orchestrate the moment for me, the ghosts of my past began to arrive. First was Kara. She looked stunning, flowy sundress, tan skin, that same sly smile. She hugged me like we were still 17. Then Harper. Leather jacket. Red lipstick. Still brooding, Whitaker? She whispered into my ear. Good. Natalie strolled in 20 minutes later, making every man in the room subtly straighten their posture. She winked when she saw me and mouthed, I see you. Julie came, too, warm and radiant, her presence softer but no less potent. She walked straight to me and touched my arm gently, like she'd never stopped being close. Kayla arrived last. Solo, bold as ever. She made a beeline for me, leaned in close, and whispered, You clean up well, but I preferred you sweaty. I laughed. Couldn't help it. And Dana noticed. Every glance, every whisper, every woman. I watched her composure falter in real time. Watched the flicker of insecurity behind her carefully constructed mask. Her younger date leaned over to say something, and she barely registered it. Her eyes were locked on me, and I was surrounded. Not in a way that felt sleazy or vengeful, but in a way that made one thing clear. I had been wanted all along. These weren't one-night stands. They were connections. Women who had seen me, not as a placeholder or provider, but as a man, a person, a fire still burning under the ash. At one point, Dana walked over. Jack, she said, voice smooth but cracking at the edges. You look different. Yeah, I said, sipping my drink. It's been a transformative year. Her eyes darted toward Natalie, then Kayla, then Kara, all still chatting near the table. You came alone? I smiled. Doesn't feel like it. That stung. I saw it. She tilted her head. Are you trying to prove something? No, I said, voice calm. But maybe you are. Her eyes narrowed. And for the first time, she didn't have a speech prepared. No monologue about growth. No condescending tone. Just silence. You wanted freedom, Dana, I said softly. And you got it. But so did I. She didn't respond. Just stared at me like she was seeing someone she couldn't quite recognize. And maybe she was. Because the man standing in front of her wasn't the one who begged for affection, who swallowed betrayal like it was medicine, who questioned his worth in the shadow of her validation. That man was gone. She walked away eventually, and I didn't watch her go. Instead, I turned back to the group, people laughing, talking, living. Harper dragged me onto the dance floor. Kara stole me for a drink. Julie made sure I had her number saved properly this time. And I laughed more that night than I had in years. Not because of revenge, but because of release. By midnight, the crowd had thinned. I stepped out onto the terrace, letting the cool air settle into my chest. Kayla joined me, slipping her hand into mine without a word. "You handled that well," she said. "Which part?" "All of it," she said, "but especially her." I didn't answer. I just watched the city lights shimmer. "She thought you'd fall apart," Kayla added. "She didn't expect you to glow up." I looked at her. "No," I said. "She forgot I already had it in me." Kayla smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. And in that quiet moment, with the city humming beneath us and the night wrapping itself around our skin like silk, I realized something important. The reunion wasn't hers. It was mine. I saw her before she saw me. She stood near the back wall of the reunion hall, half lit by the glow of overhead bulbs, dressed in navy with her arms folded gently in front of her like she was trying not to take up too much space. Stillness clung to her in a way that made the world feel quieter around her. And despite everything, the years, the miles, the lives we built with other people, I knew her in an instant. Emery, my first real girlfriend. My first heartbreak. The first woman I ever said I love you to and actually meant it. She was the one that got away. We met in college, her a year ahead of me, majoring in literature with a mind like wildfire and a heart that terrified me. Everything about her was intense. We used to spend entire nights talking, kissing until the sun came up, dreaming up futures we were too young to build. She left after graduation for grad school on the East Coast. We promised we'd make it work. We didn't. Life, as it always does, had other plans. And yet, there she was, 20 years later, sipping wine alone, eyes scanning the crowd like she wasn't sure why she'd come at all. I walked toward her slowly. She turned, and our eyes met. Her mouth parted slightly. "Jack." "Hi, Emery." The pause that followed was dense. Not awkward, not hesitant, just full, brimming with all the words neither of us had said for 2 decades. "You look," she started, then shook her head with a soft laugh. "You look like you've seen a lot." I smiled. "You have no idea." She touched her necklace absent-mindedly, a small silver feather I remembered from college. "I didn't think you'd be here. Didn't think you would." She gestured toward a table. "Can we sit?" We talked for almost an hour, caught up on the surface stuff, jobs, cities, failed relationships, parents getting older. But under every word, there was a current, a pull, like gravity was slowly drawing us back to the version of ourselves that only existed when we were together. "I used to think about you when I couldn't sleep," she admitted quietly. I looked at her. "What would you think about?" "That summer before I left," she said. "That last night in your car. We didn't say goodbye properly. I didn't know how. You kissed me like it was forever," she whispered. I meant it. Her breath caught. The silence between us stretched again. And in it, I felt the weight of all the years I'd spent convincing myself she was just nostalgia, that she was only important because she used to be important. But sitting there, watching her smile, watching her remember, it hit me. She wasn't just a memory. She was unfinished business. "You ever think about what would have happened if we tried harder?" I asked. "All the time," she said. "But we were young. And scared. And stupid." She laughed. "Definitely stupid." I reached out without thinking and took her hand across the table. Her fingers closed around mine without hesitation. "I'm not scared anymore," I said. She looked down at our hands. "Me neither." We left the reunion together. No plan. No pretense. Just this unspoken truth between us. That whatever this was, we didn't want to leave it undone again. Her hotel room was 5 blocks away. We walked in silence most of the way, her arm brushing mine occasionally, her perfume, something soft and floral, wrapping itself around my senses like a blanket. When we stepped inside her room, she paused just inside the doorway. "Jack." I turned. "If we do this, it's not about closure for me." "Good," I said, stepping close. "Because I don't want to close anything." Our kiss was slower than any I'd had in the past year. Gentle. Curious. Her lips fit mine like they were crafted to be there. My hand slid along her back, hers tangled in my shirt. Clothes came off one piece at a time, like unwrapping a memory, a rediscovery. She laid back on the bed, her hair fanned across the pillow, her skin glowing in the soft lamplight. "You're more beautiful now than you were then," I whispered. "You always said that," she said, pulling me toward her, even when I didn't believe it. I kissed her collarbone, her shoulder, the inside of her thigh. And when I slid into her, it wasn't just about sex. It was something else. It was like coming home. Her moans were soft, breathy, full of something deeper than lust. Her legs wrapped around me, her nails dug into my back, and I held her like she was the last real thing I'd ever know. We didn't rush. There was time now. When we came, it was slow and overwhelming, a shared release that melted the years between us. Afterward, we lay tangled together, the world muffled outside. Her fingers rested against my chest, right over my heart. "I never stopped wondering about you," she said. "I always wondered what it would have been like if you'd stayed. Maybe now," she whispered, "I don't have to wonder anymore." I looked down at her. She wasn't a ghost anymore. She was real. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the one that got away. Maybe she was the one who came back when it mattered most. The message was waiting when I woke up. From Dana. "We need to talk. I'll be by around 4. No explanation. No question. No apology. Just control, her old language. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't feel dread. I didn't feel anticipation. What I felt, more than anything else, was done. The reunion had made it real. Not the women, not even the sex, but the way they looked at me, like I had value, like I was still wanted, and the way Dana had looked, like someone realizing her golden parachute might have ripped on the way down. I cleaned the kitchen, brewed coffee, and didn't bother to shave. I wanted her to see the man I'd become, tired of trimming himself down to fit her narrow world. When she arrived, she didn't even knock. She still had a key. That was her, in a nutshell, assuming the right to walk through doors she'd long since abandoned. She walked in like she owned the house, still in that high-neck blouse, gold jewelry, manicured fingers gripping her phone like it might shield her from the fallout. "Jack," she said, setting her bag on the counter. "We need to address what's been happening." I raised an eyebrow. "What's been happening?" She crossed her arms. "You've changed, and not in a good way. You've been parading around, acting like some teenager on a second wind." I couldn't help the laugh that escaped. "Parading?" I echoed. "That's rich, coming from the woman who brought a 30-year-old boy toy to a reunion like it was her red carpet comeback." She flushed. "That's not the point." "Oh, but it is," I said, walking around the island slowly. "Because this isn't about me changing. This is about you losing control." Her jaw tightened. "You're being cruel." "No," I said, voice calm. "I'm being clear. You wanted an open marriage, remember? Growth, you said. Authenticity. You didn't ask how I felt. You didn't care. You just decided. And when I didn't beg or break, when I started finding parts of myself again, you panicked." She stared at me. "I thought we were being honest with each other." "You weren't being honest, Dana," I said. "You were being selfish. There's a difference." Her silence stretched. "I was loyal for years. Even when I felt invisible. Even when your touch turned cold and your eyes wandered. I stayed. I gave. I shrunk. And when I stopped doing that, when I started remembering who the hell I was, you called it a midlife crisis." "Because it looks like one," she snapped. "You're reconnecting with exes. Sleeping around." "No," I interrupted. "You slept around. I reconnected with people who remembered who I was before you made me forget." Her expression cracked then, a flicker of something raw behind her eyes. "Regret? Maybe, but not enough. And let's not pretend this conversation is about morality," I continued, "because it's not about what I've done. It's about what I've stopped doing, waiting, obeying, orbiting you." She stepped back like she'd been slapped. "I'm still your wife," she said. I shook my head. "No, you're not." The words came easy, easier than I ever imagined. She reached for the countertop, fingers pressing into the granite. "So what now? You want a divorce? You want to throw everything away?" "You already did," I said. "The moment you decided your needs mattered more than our vows." She looked around the kitchen, the house we built, the life we shared, and I watched the realization settle on her face. She wasn't in control anymore. "You know," she said quietly, "I always thought you were safe. Predictable. That you'd never leave." I replied, until I realized I deserved more than being someone's plan B. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You think all those women love you?" she asked bitterly. "They're just distractions. You'll see." "Maybe," I said, "but every one of them made me feel seen, desired, alive, something you stopped doing a long time ago." Silence again. Then, like a final move in a game she'd already lost, she said, "I was lonely too, Jack. I just didn't know how to say it." I nodded. Neither did I. But I learned. The hard way. She looked down. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. And I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Leave the key on the table, I said. She hesitated. Then she pulled it from her bag, set it down, and walked to the door. No dramatic goodbyes. No door slams. Just the quiet click of a woman leaving a life she thought would always wait for her. That night, I sat alone for a while. No music. No lights. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant echo of her heels still fading from the floor. Then I picked up my phone. Scrolled through the names. 7 women. Each had lit a part of me back on fire. Each had reminded me of who I'd been and who I could be again. But only one of them made me feel like I was still becoming something. Still growing in a way Dana never understood. I found her name. Took a breath. Typed. I'd like to see you again. For real this time. Sent. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt like my life was finally mine again. I sat alone on the porch, the last of summer clinging to the air like it didn't want to leave either. The sky was burning orange behind the trees, cicadas humming their restless tune. My drink sat untouched beside me. For the first time in what felt like years, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. I thought of all the women. The 7 women who had, each in their own way, reminded me I was still a man worth touching, worth loving, worth remembering. Not just a husband. Not just a provider. Not a placeholder in someone else's narrative. Each one had given me something back that I didn't realize I'd lost. Harper reignited the fire in me. She reminded me I could still want recklessly and be wanted back just as fiercely. Kara gave me that innocent spark again. That giddy kind of affection that didn't need pretense. She saw the boy behind the bitterness and said, he still deserves love. Natalie gave me confidence. A reminder that I wasn't just functional, I was fantasy. That someone could daydream about me long after I'd forgotten how to dream. Julie gave me comfort. The kind that wraps around your ribs and tells you you're safe. That you're still home to someone, even after everything breaks. Kayla gave me boldness. She made me feel dangerous again, like someone with teeth, someone who didn't have to apologize for wanting what he wanted. Emery. God, Emery. She gave me truth. Not revenge. Not nostalgia. But something real. Something still blooming after years underground. Something that wasn't about proving a point. And Dana? She gave me the final push. The bitter pill I needed to swallow to finally stop asking who I was in her world and start deciding who I wanted to be in my own. The text I sent to Emery the night Dana left had gotten a reply within minutes. Then let's do it right this time. We'd met for lunch the next day. No pretense, no games. Just soft smiles and lingering glances over coffee and sandwiches neither of us touched. We didn't rush into anything. We didn't need to. We knew. There's a kind of love that doesn't shout, doesn't burn everything down to feel real. It waits, patient, sure, unbending, until you're ready to meet it without baggage dragging behind you. That was us now. I looked around the porch, the house I used to share, now filled with new echoes. The walls didn't hum with tension anymore. No stifled silence. No passive aggression. No walking on eggshells hoping to avoid another eye roll. Another carefully delivered insult disguised as feedback. Just air. Open, breathable air. I picked up the photo that still sat on the table. An old picture of me, Dana, and our son, taken 5 years ago on vacation. We looked happy. Maybe we were. Or maybe we just didn't know the cracks were already forming beneath our smiles. I didn't throw it away. It was still my life. Still my past. But it no longer defined my future. Later that night, I found myself journaling, something I hadn't done since college. Just raw thoughts, stream of consciousness. It wasn't about poetry or paragraphs. It was about putting it somewhere outside my own head. I wrote, I am not the sum of someone else's expectations. I am not broken. I am not lost. I am not invisible. I am a man who survived betrayal without becoming bitter. A man who was wanted all along, even when he forgot how to want himself. I underlined that last sentence twice. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? I didn't go looking for revenge. I didn't burn the house down. I just remembered who I was. The women I saw again, they weren't conquests. They weren't notches or victories. They were mirrors. Each one reflecting a piece of me I'd buried under years of compromise and quiet resignation. And in the end, I realized the greatest betrayal wasn't what Dana did with her body. It was what I let her do to my identity. Emery called me that night. Can I come over? She asked. Always, I said. She arrived in jeans and a hoodie, no makeup, hair messy from the wind. And yet, she was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in years. We didn't talk much, just curled up on the couch, her head on my shoulder, my arm around her, the soft glow of the TV washing over us. I felt full. That's the word that came to mind. Not happy, not healed, full. Like everything I'd been emptied of had slowly, gently, been poured back into me. By touch, by truth, by time. As midnight crept closer, I whispered into Emery's hair. I feel like I just walked out of a long dream. She looked up, eyes soft. You're awake now.